Fans of the Horus Heresy, thank you very much for joining me for a model, rules and tactics review of the Legio Custodes Sagittarum Guard Squad by Forge World. So here we have it, the shooty custodians who like to shoot as opposed to slash. In a force of unenviable elite melee troops, here we have some guys who do things differently. You can see, yes, these guys have got a very different look to the rest of the custodians thus far. They eschew big, plumy headdresses. They don't have large halberds, swords or shields. They have a conservative helmet design, the spike, or a pickelhaube, a 31st millennium pickelhaube. If you don't know what a pickelhaube is, I will leave a link in the description so you can see that. A very different look, and as you can see, these are a Resin Upgrade Kit. We have the plastic custodian bodies by Games Workshop, and the Forge World conversion adds the arms, the Adrastus Bolt Caliver and the head. This is what the actual upgrade kit looks like when you get it. This is I bought a second one because I so enjoyed and so liked these original 5. I thought I'd buy these as for a rainy day. Get some more parts while the molds were brand new to use later. As you can see, the current retail price is £16 in the UK. Obviously, you've got your postage on that. So yes, you do need both. You need the plastic models and the resin components. Forge World will sell you all that lot for £51 a squad. What I did was I bought a copy of The Burning of Prospero, which cost me £77 including postage. Bought the upgrade squad separately, so that cost me 16. So what we're on, 77 at £93. So I paid £93, £42 more than buying the squad. And I've now also got 30 Marines, 5 Sisters of Silence, a couple of hero models and 5 Terminators. So yeah, worth considering that, particularly if you're buying from an independent retailer. So let's talk about the actual models. Let's look at them first. So, very nice models. I'm more of a shooty army sort of person, so these guys instantly appealed to me. Before these came along, I'd kind of looked at the Custodians and thought, yeah, these guys came along, and coupled with the Sisters of Silence and their awesome transporter, and I also like these guys' dedicated transport, the Coronas, I thought, all right, I'm going to do myself a little Talons of the Emperor detachment. Very nice models. The resin conversion parts interface excellently with the Custodian plastics, as you can see. The armament is the Adrastus Bolt Caliver, which is this hefty looking bolt weapon, and they are also armed with a Misericordia. If anyone ever knows what the rules are on that, please do let me know. But yeah, so don't forget to put your Misericordias on as well for their close combat weapons. Great looking models. Let's have a look at some more of these guys. I did a separate video where I did the posing on. They're a bit monopose because the left hand is actually moulded onto the Bolt Caliver. So I did a couple of videos where I did some heat bending and manipulation to add a bit more variety to poses. And you can get some nice aiming poses like this dude. And if you look around YouTube, there are some other reviews where people have done really nice poses on these guys. But it shows you can do better than the pack that actually, they look really rather dull there. You can, as you can see, you can get more life into them. Even so, you don't get the greatest amount of variety in the posing, which I guess sort of mirrors the Custodian Guards. This guy, so then you get, I mean, obviously you can put any arms on any legs and just get the sort of mixture of motion that you want. And yeah, the set works really well for me. I think they're great models. They just look great. And if, as I say, if you like me, if you like slightly more understated warriors, the standard Custodians are very ornate and a little bit OTT, aren't they? Let's be honest. If you prefer something a little bit more understated, then these are worthy of consideration, and I like them. Plastic detailing is fantastic. The detail on the armor is brilliant. The Custodians, they don't have a separate backpack. Their armor is so sophisticated. It actually has this micro power pack that's been integrated into the armor to provide power and life support. The sculptor and the plastic molding has captured that beautifully. And yeah, the rest of the ornate filigree has also been captured so nicely on these models. Very, very good. As the 5th guy of the squad. when I get around to building my next 5, I'm going to go for some more dynamic poses, and I've heard a few ideas for converting. I've got a few new ideas of my own. Right, kit quality, etc. Well, the plastics are obviously GW plastics. GW plastics are excellent, particularly the figures. These Custodians are no exception. I was particularly impressed by how the molds have been constructed in such a way as to minimize the amount of cleanup, the number of mold lines that ran across surfaces. That had been done excellently well, and I was dead impressed by that. That made the whole assembly process really easy. Casting quality on the Forge World upgrade resin parts was also superb in this instance. Absolutely faultless. Hardly had any cleanup to do on these. These were absolutely spot on, just what you want when you buy Forge World kits. I had one little defect on the plastic, and if you watch my assembly video, you'll see didn't know what this was. It was a pit in it. There was a slight void in the cast, but I just filled it with a little milliput, so no big issue there. In terms of enhancing the details, well, as you can see here, I have bored out the bolt barrel of the Bolt Caliver and the muzzle brake, and that works really well. They've got nice chunky barrels, big wide bores, so that worked really well. And I did that on all 5 to enhance the detail, so excellent. So overall, you know, great. The plastics, there's nothing to fault there, and resin components were 10 out of 10 here. Absolutely excellent. So yeah, very nice. Let's do some size comparisons before we move on to the rules. I'm going to start with an average human, and today's volunteer for the average human is one of these Victoria miniatures, Cadian female guard troopers. Now, I've chosen this warrior because I think they work really well in 28 to 30 mil as realistically sized humans, and yeah, you stand the Custodian next to one and it really kind of captures the titanic nature of these elite companions of the Emperor. You kind of feel the Custodian stands something like 8 feet tall or something like that. They're enormous, and a huge bulk of their sophisticated armor as well. Yeah, so normal humans need not apply. Moving up to a Forge World human model, well, here we have Avus Joven, the beautifully detailed surgeon from the Solar Auxilia, one of my favourite Forge World models. And he's a bit taller, but yeah, the Custodian is still certainly looking down his nose to this guy who we would never really expect to need the services of, given his badassery. And let's move up the scale, and I think it's time for one of the Emperor's Astartes. And here we have a member of the Iron Hands Legion, and this is the leader of my Volkite Culverin heavy support squad, and he is just looking bionic to bits, rich with icons of the 10th Legion. And yes, well, the transhuman Astartes are, well, yes, dwarfed by the Custodians. So yes, I'm afraid you chaps are a little bit outdone. But the Astartes can get a bit bigger, and if we take a Terminator, so here we have another volunteer from the Iron Hands to try compare to the Custodian. Here we've got a Gorgon Terminator with his Stormbolter and Chainfist. And this is better. Yes, now we're getting there. So sticking an Astartes in Terminator armor, and you're doing better, but you're still standing above them, looking bigger and badder. And of course, you know, he's got his little Pickelhaub spike, which gives him the edge. Let's shift across to the Servants of the Omnissiah. Here we have a Talax combat cyborg armed with a lightning gun. And finally we've got something comparable size. So yes, a Talax is about the same size as a Custodian Sagittarum Guard. Wouldn't fancy the Talax's chances in a battle against this guy. This guy would have him for breakfast at range or in close combat. Yeah, he's in trouble. Comparisons. Shall I do one more? Go on, let's do one more. I've not been fair to the Astartes. They need something proper sized, and here we have a relic Contemptor Dreadnought, again from the Iron Hands. And let's bob him behind those. Yeah, so Contemptor Dreadnoughts are big beasties, but standing next to the Custodians, they kind of feels like the size differential you get with a standard Marine stood next to a standard Castroferrum Dreadnought. The Contemptor is a big machine, but the Custodians reduce its towering stature somewhat. Now let's move on to the rules and tactics section of this review. My source for the rules here is Horus Heresy Book 7 Inferno. The Legio Custodes Sagittarum Guard squad forms part of the Talons of the Emperor force. The Sagittarum Guard are a heavy support choice, and a standard squad is 185 points and is composed of 3 Sagittarum Guard. Their profile is 5s across the board with 2 wounds and 2 attacks and a leadership of 9. Their armor save conferred by their Custodes armor is a 2+. Infantry characters, so every guy is a character, worth remembering. Their war gear is an Adrastus Bolt Caliver, a Misericordia, a refractor field, plasma and crack grenades, Custodes armor, and they have the special rules of Legio Custodes, Bulky and Crusader. They get a number of options as well. They can take a Cronus Grav carrier as a dedicated transport if the squad is 6 models or fewer. We have a Cronus in the background, and that is indeed my MO for this squad. We'll be using the Cronus as a way of moving these guys around, dropping them into position, and then supporting them with some additional firepower. A few additional options as well. Not a great number, but there are a few. You can take 7 additional Sagittarum Guard at 65 points each, so that gives you a maximum squad size of 10 Sagittarum. You can equip the entire squad with the following war gear: melter bombs for 5 points per trooper, array strikes for 2 points per trooper, and teleportation transponders for 5 points per trooper. Finally, a single member of the squad can exchange their Adrastus Bolt Caliver for an Adrathic Destructor with a Magisterium Vexilla. A few options there, and well, let's just consider the whole package then. Firstly, let's review their weapon. The Adrastus Bolt Caliver is a combi weapon in effect, and it's made up of 2 elements. The bolt element, the Bolt Caliver, is heavy 3, range 30, strength 5, AP 4. So it is in effect, it's like a carbine version of a heavy bolter. Obviously, it's a lot smaller than a heavy bolter. However, it's still a heavy weapon, so it lacks, and these guys lack relentless. So you do have to be mindful of that when you're playing them. You don't have the ability to maneuver and fire at full accuracy. The second part of the Adrastus Bolt Caliver, the combi weapon part, shall we say, is an Adrathic Destructor. Now, an Adrathic Destructor is a short-ranged weapon, so it contrasts the long range of the Bolt Caliver, and it's range 12, strength 5, AP 2. Then it has a whole host of special rules. It has armor bane, instant death, and gets hot. It's an extremely potent monster killer, hero killer, and tank buster as well. At first glance, we have a warrior then that's equipped for fighting enemy infantry and heavy infantry very effectively at long range. Then they're also armed with an extremely potent short-ranged anti-tank gun. And the other important thing to remember with the Adrathic Destructor is that as an assault weapon, that means the anti-tank capability of these guys is highly mobile. Okay, obviously their accuracy, their combat stats, their strength, toughness, wounds, etc., they're all typically high for the Custodians. Unless they're fighting dedicated anti-tank or anti-armor units, they're going to be extremely hard to defeat. And even against such units, their refractor fields gives them that last get-out chance. And the fact that they're toughness 5 means that unless you're hitting them with strength 10 weapons, you're going to be looking at multiple shots to kill each guy. Really not very efficient firing las cannons, for example, at these guys, or crack missiles. Well, crack missiles are hopelessly inefficient against these guys. I guess the squad size depends on how you want to play them. I'm going to play them using the Cronus as a dedicated transport. So I've got 5. I might add 1 guy with the Vexilla, or I might just buy a hero at some point to put with them. Certainly adding a few more guys to a squad isn't a bad idea for the extra firepower and survivability. Melter bombs are situational. Are they worth it? Potentially, but don't forget you've already got the Adrathic Destructor, which is a very potent anti-tank gun. Do you really need to put melter bombs on top of that? Not sure. Take it or leave it. Next option is actually, I think, a really useful one for this squad, the array strikes. So the array strikes disrupt deep strikers trying to approach near these guys. If you're playing these guys from a point of view of seizing an objective and holding it and giving medium range fire support, then they are an obvious target for enemy units to deep strike against to try to dislodge them. The array strikes is an excellent counter to that. Worthy of consideration there, if you get these guys in a tough objective and your opponent has got a deep strike unit and want to send in, you're giving them a bit of a Hobson's choice there. Do you leave the Sagittarum alone, or do you deep strike near them, knowing that there's a high risk of getting a mishap? The second effect of the arrow strike is it forces any weapon with the barrage rule shooting them has to add an additional d6 into its scatter deviation pool, and you have to pick the 2 highest results for the distance scattered. So it doesn't affect the hit outcome, so it's still 1 in 3 chance of hitting. However, if a deviation does occur, then it's going to be a bigger deviation, and it's going to help protect them taking any damage. And that's useful particularly when you think about using the solidity special rule with the enhanced squad coherency. So yeah, arrow strikes are certainly worthwhile. And then the final option is teleportation transponders. Well, yep, great way of deep striking a squad in. I guess if you've got a squad of 10, then 50 points for teleportation transporters. You can have a Cronus for 135 points, so you might sometimes be worth spending the extra points to get the vehicle rather than just using it as a one-shot trick to deep strike your troops. And finally, the Magisterium Vexilia. Well, you sacrifice a little bit of firepower by losing a Bolt Caliver, but then you get the morale bonuses of the Vexilia, which is worthwhile, being able to re-roll a failed result. But even better is it then means your Sagittarum Guard cause fear, and that just stacks nicely with denying enemy units attacking them. If you had a Magisterium Vexilia and arrow strikes, well, that and you're camping an objective, then you just become a very hard unit to dislodge by anyone trying to deep strike near you. Good option to consider there. Tactical use of the Sagittarum Guard. They're interesting. Now, there's been a fair amount of divided opinion on these guys in terms of how effective they are. I think you just look at them as their own unit. They're a very effective unit. There's no questioning the firepower they can put out. And if you crunch some maths, these guys will probably outshoot the same points of heavy support marines in a heavy bolter versus the Adrastus Bolt Caliver battle on average. However, the Astartes still have the firepower advantage overall, but it's worth thinking about that. Good for camping objectives and laying down fire support. The Custodian army doesn't have other infantry that can do fire support, so they have a unique role. And then they also double up though with the ability to kill armor very potently at close range because of their Adrathic Destructor. So funny unit, they can fight very effectively up close and then very effectively at medium range. So any way you play them, you need to consider those capabilities. The Cronus presents interesting options because with the Cronus you can deep strike these guys in, position them well, and then support them with some long-ranged higher strength firepower, which is useful. And then with the Arachnus Blaze Cannon, you've also got a high AP weapon to support them with at range. And once the Cronus has dropped squad off, the Cronus can then go flanking and cause a nuisance. And the Cronus is a very tough vehicle in its own respect. It will certainly cause a lot of bother to deal with it. So that's worthy of consideration. Able to teleport in is another way, a good way. I mean, great way of getting in and using your Adrathic Destructors to knock something out. I think they're a very versatile squad. You could play them just as foot sloggers, seize location and gun down enemy troops all day with the Bolt Calivers, or couple them up with the Cronus and deep strike in for fun and frolics, supported with an infantry fighting vehicle, or go for as big a squad as you want, give them teleportation transponders, and I don't think any unit in the game can count itself as being safe from 10 shots with the Adrathic Destructors. Despite the fact they're relatively low strength, you can still score an armor penetration of 17, and no unit can ignore that, particularly when you've got the capability to attack them on the flank. A Custodian armor combined with the Crusader rule means these guys are highly mobile as well when they're on foot. So that's it means once you strike them in or drop them in with the Cronus, they then can move effectively across the battlefield. They're probably not the most deadly unit in the Custodian army by far, but don't let that make you think that they're not effective units, because when you compare them to units from other forces, they're a very potent force and they've got some great capabilities. You've got to remember not to get blinded by the general very high level quality of the Custodians and discount these guys, because they do have their uses and they do fulfill that all-important range support role. And when you think about a Custodian force having a lot of melee capabilities of whatever type, having a really solid objective camping range support unit that you don't dare attack up close, it just further messes with your opponent's mind in terms of trying to tactically fight your Talons of the Emperor force. There's a few thoughts around these guys. I thought this more of as a looks and fun force, although I still expect that I'm going to do well with it. I'll be interested to hear your thoughts as well on the tactical applications of the Sagittarum Guard squad. Perhaps you've got a neat tactic that you've devised, used, or have an idea for. Maybe you think they're absolutely rubbish. You think other custodian units can provide similar fire support capabilities. But share all those opinions in the comments, please. Thank you very much for watching. I will speak to you next time, and goodbye.